guys, welcome to the NewsNowNation channel. Today we are really excited. We have Professor Himanshu Rai with us, who is the director of IIM Indore, and we are going to talk to him about the education space in India, about management studies in particular, and just talk to him about his journey. So thank you so much, sir, for taking this time and talking to us. We are very grateful to you.
My pleasure, Mishri.
Awesome. So just starting out, just so our viewers have a better understanding of who you are, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, specifically your academic journey, since you're so involved in the field of academia?
So my journey in academia came much later in my professional career. So basically, I happened to be an electrical engineer
Wow.
who worked with Tata Steel for about 8.5 years. And while I was working with Tata Steel in Jamshedpur, I figured out the purpose of my life. I had my serendipitous moment of epiphany when I figured out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I went back to school after 8.5 years of working at IIM Ahmedabad, studied there, completed my PhD in negotiation, and then came into academia. So for about a year, I taught at XLRI, after which I came to IIM Lucknow. Then in between, for 2 years, I was heading the India campus of SDA Bocconi and was a professor at SDA Bocconi, Milan. And now, since 31st December 2018, I've taken charge as the director of IIM Indore. So that is my academic journey so far.
Wow. And just given that, you got, you said it was serendipity, finding out that, academia was your passion. So what led to that moment, and what led to you having this, epiphany that you want to leave the corporate life and you want to enter, teaching?
So this is something that I've discussed on so many fora that I think everyone who kind of is in touch with me probably knows this story. So this was one of my trips to the Himalayas. So I also happen to be a trained mountaineer. Every year I spend 3 to 4 weeks in the Himalayas. And I'd gone to the Himalayas. I was, after a trek, I was reading a book. And, many people think that it must have been some kind of philosophical book, but this was a book called Alice in Wonderland. And I came across a particular passage in Alice in Wonderland where Alice, she reaches crossroads. So she falls into a rabbit hole. For those of your viewers who don't know this particular book or the story. So this is the story of this 12-year-old girl, Alice, who falls into a rabbit hole. And when she comes out on the other side of the rabbit hole, she reaches an anthropomorphic world, a world where animals talk just like human beings. And she's walking when she reaches crossroads, so roads going in multiple directions, and she doesn't know where to go. Fortunately, she sees a cat coming from other direction. His name is Cheshire Cat. So Alice asks the Cheshire Cat, where do I go from here? Which road do I take? And the cat says, that depends a good deal on where you wish to reach. Alice says, I don't much care where. And the cat says, then it doesn't matter which road you take.
Wow.
And that was the statement that stuck me smack on my face. Because it said that if you do not know where you wish to reach, if you do not know what your destination is, then do anything in life. And that's what got me thinking. And obviously, as I said, it was a moment of serendipity simply because I was in the Himalayas. And in any case, when you are in the Himalayas, you get all those vibrations, you feel very spiritual, you are in awe of nature. And suddenly it struck me as to what did I wanted to do with my life. And the moment that thought came to me, the next thought was obviously a follow-up question. How do I get there now that I figured out my destination? And what I realized was that teaching and the academic world will take me there faster.
Wow.
And that's my transition from the corporate world to the academic world.
Brilliant. What a story. And, Alice in Wonderland is one of the most profound books. I completely agree with you that it seems like a children's book. It seems like something you read to babies to sleep, but it's such a profound book. And through its different words, it just somehow explains some of the very complex parts of life. In fact, this little extract that you spoke about, I remember it because it was in my 8th standard English literature textbook. So I just had quite a throwback Thursday with that one. But you're right. So getting into academia, obviously the education space in India is extremely large. We are a young country and we have a lot of young people, and we have a very, very diverse set of people. Given that, entering the education space, I want to ask you, as not only as a teacher and now a professor and a director of such a large college in India, even as a student, what did you feel worked in the Indian education space, and what do you think didn't exactly work that well?
To me, Mishri, everything worked. So, and I'm not talking as a director, and I'm not talking as a teacher. I'm talking purely as a student.
Yeah.
So, while I was a student, see, there are 2, 3 experiences that I would talk about. So, and one could say that maybe I was the fortunate one, but then I have been consistently fortunate in the sense that even when I was in my school, I came across such brilliant teachers. I was in a school where we had to dedicate 2 hours of activity and 1 hour of society. So I actually learned how to make jams because the activity that I took up was fruit preservation.
Wow.
I actually learned how to ride horses because that was another thing that I took up. I went into dramatics and theater because that was the society that I picked up. So the school, at least the one that I went to, provided me with opportunities to go beyond my academic likings, to go beyond my books as well. It also provided me the opportunity to be in the library whenever I wanted to. So my library was always my most favorite space in my school. So I got all of those, and then I got some amazing people who have influenced me. So in my school, I still remember my physics teacher, and he's one of the persons who I always talk about, Mr. Katiyar, who taught me physics in class 11th and 12th. I still remember we used to try and solve problems from these 2 crazy books that we used to have in physics in those days, and I'm sure those books still are around. One is by Irodov, and the other is by Resnick and Halliday. And those used to have very, very tough questions. And Katiyar sir and I, we would try to solve those problems, and sometimes we wouldn't be able to solve a couple of problems. And I still remember one of the days I was going back home, and I used to live barely 100 meters from his house, where I suddenly heard him shouting from his rooftop that, Himanshu, hang on, hang on. So I stopped. He came down and literally under a lamp. So, which is under, by a lamp, I mean, the bijli ka khamba in the locality, under the street lamp, under the street light. He stood there, and then he explained to me that particular problem, and we managed to solve it. So I had such a teacher who has inspired me, in my school days. Then once I went into engineering to KREC Suratkal, again I had teachers who were brilliant. I had teachers who, through their own behavior, through their own life, influenced a lot of us. And then again, KREC was one of those places which, apart from academia, gave me so much in terms of the extracurricular activities. So I used to be a debater. I used to take part in extempore. I used to take part in poetry recitation. Our team was the best team 4 years in a row in Damsharads, and we were unbelievably good. I was into jam, just a minute, etc., etc. So I think opportunities, so far as the Indian education system is concerned, are out there galore. What may not happen in certain institutions, again, as I said, I have been fortunate that all the institutions that I've been to, later IIM Ahmedabad, which again gave me lots of opportunities. What may happen is that in some places you might come across some teacher who is not really a great influence, or maybe some school which perhaps pays attention to only one element or one aspect of education, thereby ignoring other aspects. So there, I think those things could be problematic. But then, we are fortunate that now we have the new education policy, the NEP 2020, which is trying to bring education onto the same thought process, with the same philosophy with which I have had the good fortune of being educated all my life.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And obviously, I can tell by your profile that you were an academically oriented person. In fact, just to give you a background about me, I studied in very, very traditional schools, and I still study in a very traditional course. And in a very convent and very academically oriented school. And for me, that worked because I was not, I was somebody who didn't mind big books and didn't mind the study of it. But I often noticed, and this is my opinion, obviously, that sometimes the Indian education system, and I don't mean only pre-primary or high school education, I mean degree education, can also take away sometimes their self-worth, and their idea of self-worth is not focused on enough. um, and in most professions, and this is what I've noticed in your career, when you start working, you have to have a really strong self-worth and your self-identity, because nobody else is there to validate you when you're working. You have to not take things personally. You have to get up the next day even if the previous day was a horrible day. I want to talk to you about how education systems in general can make sure that this idea of self-worth, this idea of being a whole person, this idea of recognizing your talents in various aspects can be systemically imbibed. So it's not just that somebody gets it because of their good fortune. They get it because the system is designed that way.
So I think one of the things where already a beginning has been made is, as I said, in terms of the new education policy itself. But obviously, the devil lies in the detail, which means you may have a great policy on paper, but once you start implementing it, do you really implement it with the same spirit? Is something that needs to be seen. And therefore, that will become extremely important. To me, an institution needs to, first of all, prioritize on the resources that they ought to be spending money, time, and energy on. And I think that's where most of the institutions mess up, if at all they do. So, if you were to ask me my philosophy, what would I do as the leader of an institution? My biggest resource are the faculty. Because one of the things that I've realized is if you have great faculty, then the rest of the infrastructure really doesn't matter. I mean, if I have a good teacher right under the lamppost, we did manage to have some great learning. So even with a very humble or mediocre infrastructure, if I have a great faculty, the impact that that person would have on the students is going to be great. So that is number one. The number two is that institutions, particularly those in higher education, ought to realize that their job is not to teach. Their job today is to facilitate learning. When you think from a mindset that you are here to teach, you believe that knowledge exists on this side of the classroom and it has to be transferred onto the other side. While I'm not just cognizant of the fact, I make sure that I actually reinforce it to my colleagues, to my students, etc., that a brilliant amount of knowledge also lies on the other side, which means the students learn so much from their own peer group. The students learn so much from their own experiences, and which is why I'm a big supporter of campus life. I always tell people that you must experience campus life, and I'm not a very big supporter of this online medium, because to me, an online medium cannot fully replace the beauty of a campus, of physical classrooms, of education, where you are actually talking to each other, where you're experiencing the entire thing together. So that is the second, which means participant-centered learning. You have to understand that the participant is at the center, and therefore, just like the basic fundamental philosophy of communication, communication is not about how well you speak. Communication is about how well have you made the other person understand whatever it is that you were trying to make him or her understand. And likewise, teaching or institutionalized teaching is all about how have you helped the participants in the learning process, rather than giving gyan and assuming that simply because you have spewed out gyan, that gyan has actually been imbibed. So that is the second part, the participant-centered learning. And the third part is that you have to actually use pedagogical tools that are in line with the content that you're trying to convey. So, for example, content comes under three categories. You have knowledge, you have skills, you have attitudes. Now, for knowledge, for imparting knowledge, a lecture method may be a good method. But if you have to impart something in terms of attitude, if you want to bring about an attitudinal change, then a lecture is not good enough. You have to actually use an experiential pedagogical tool. It could be a case study, it could be an exercise, it could be a role play, it could be taking people right out to the Himalayas and doing something with them over there so that they experience. And therefore, a focus on the pedagogical tools. So, first of all, the philosophy itself of investing resources in faculty. Number two, considering participant to be the center of the universe and not you as a faculty. And number three, obviously, using the appropriate pedagogical tool.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And, you spoke about your teacher, and I keep remembering this one teacher of mine. And I was somebody, I have always been somebody who has gotten criticized for being very distracted and seeming a little distracted, a little fidgety, a little talkative. These are, my report cards, this feedback used to come to my parents. And it was a very common complaint, and my mom was very used to it, and she still gets it, and she's still very used to it. But I remember this one teacher used to come to teach me biology, and biology was never something that was extremely something I wanted to pursue or anything, but it was something that I had to study because it was compulsory. And I remember this professor had come, and he was this teacher used to come home to give me a private lessons because my dad thought I was getting too distracted in school with, because it was a classroom of 50 people. And he had come once, and I used to get distracted because a little bit, like a little here and there, my eyes would wander. But he never called me out on it. And he was one of the first people who never really called me out on it. And but I learned a lot in his classes. And I remember one day I said, so how come you never yelled at me if I've looked away, or if I've gotten distracted, or if I've started doodling something in the corner of my book? So he just said this one thing, and it was the biggest attitude shift that I had. He said that, as the teacher, it is my responsibility to have you pay attention. It is not your responsibility to pay attention. And just when he said that, it just changed the game for me. It was just by his way of being. I think that was the strongest pedagogical tool that he had. By his way of being, he influenced me so greatly.
True. Some people's life is their message.
Yeah, it is. A lot of our viewers are young students, and young students who really are ambitious. And I am somebody who's a very strong believer of the fact that the youth of our country is active, and they want to do things, and they're ambitious, and they're hungry. And sometimes they're distracted, sometimes they are afraid, but at their heart they're not lazy, which I think many old people forget sometimes, but I am a strong believer that they are. But they're confused what they're supposed to do. Specifically talking about management studies, which is a huge area, and I see a lot of my friends also keen on pursuing management education. Who do you think should enter the space of management studies? And I feel like there is a sect of people who probably shouldn't. What do you think?
Anybody who thinks that the management study or the degree that a management institution gives is going to take him or her closer to his or her destination is the one who should come and study. There is no prescriptive model whereby I say that, okay, people with this kind of a background, people with this kind of a gender, people with this kind of an interest should come to the management. What you have to figure out is what is it that you eventually wish to be. And by that, what I mean is, I always persuade people and I always encourage people to think about the kind of a world that they would want to be a part of. And once you have painted that picture in your head, the next thing you need to realize is that nobody else is going to create that world for you. You have to create it for yourself.
Yeah.
And once you realize that you have to create the kind of a world that you have imagined in your head, then you try and see as to which form of career or which form of work that you do is going to take you there, is going to help you in creating that world. And to be able to do that kind of work, what is the kind of an education that you would need? So for me, it all starts with the journey starts with the figuring out of the destination. So that is part one. So I would not try and compartmentalize things into a set of attributes which are required for somebody who wants to get into management. The second thing, and I think this is where it is more typical of a country such as ours, given the societal norms. So I became an engineer not because I wanted to. I became an engineer simply because my dad decided 1 minute after my birth that I'm going to make him an engineer, like he decided for my brother after a minute of his birth that he wants him to become a doctor. Lo and behold, my younger brother is a doctor, I'm an engineer. And therefore, I think early on, people, particularly parents, they should start helping their children in understanding where their potential lies. Rather than trying and fixing the norms for them, saying that, look, these are the opportunities which are available, and therefore you must choose one of these. And I think both the parental guidance as well as guidance in the schools ought to be in that way, where you help the child in understanding his or her true potential, number one, in figuring out what his or her dreams are, and then trying to do some kind of a matchmaking between the two.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Another thing I want to talk to you about is the degree is often called a bachelor's of business administration or a master's of business administration, and the problem with that is that, and this is my genuine question, a lot of the people who are in my life and who do business don't have this degree, and they haven't studied formally. A lot of them are dropouts. In fact, they haven't even gotten a formal education. A lot of people think that if somebody studies management, they become better businessmen. Is that the case? And if so, then in what way?
So there are two issues here. So let me separate the two.
Yeah.
First of all, this entire romanticization of a degree not being required to become good at something is a notion that comes by looking at exceptions, not the general rule. So you look at a Zuckerberg, or you look at a Bill Gates, and you say, hey, this guy did not need degree. Or you look at some businessman in India who's done very well without degree, and you say, hey, look at this person, he or she doesn't have an MBA, and look how well this person has done. What people don't look at is that to compensate for this person has actually worked very, very hard. It's not the degree which is important. It is the work that you put in which is extremely important. So when you come to, for example, let's say you come to an IIM or a great B school, what happens is what you do in these 2 years. It's not just about the degree. It's about the entire ecosystem. It's about the entire environment. And by the way, all of those who poo-poo saying that MBA is not required end up hiring MBAs. So, in that case, you should be hiring people without degrees. You should be hiring people who have never gone to school, because, if you truly believe in the fact that education spoils people rather than actually bringing some value to them, then you ought to be walking the talk. So I want to, take away the romantic notion that a degree, people without degrees do very, very well. What people don't realize and don't see is the amount of hard work, toil, sweat, labor that they have put in otherwise, which an institution makes you in an institutionalized, organized way. And the second part, does MBA make a person a better business person? No. An MBA makes a person a better decision maker. So at IIM, we don't teach people how to do business. We teach people how to make better and better decisions, how to make decisions based on data, how to develop intuition so that you can make decisions with limited amount of information, with bounded rationality. Thereafter, subsequently, whether you use it in the world of business, whether you use it in the world of whatever it is that you're doing, including your running your own life, is entirely a choice that those with the degrees make. So do remember, degree is about learning. Degree is not about becoming adept at a particular thing. It's about improving your decision-making skills.
Yeah. And for sure, what you said made a lot of sense about structure. Sometimes people can take an unstructured path, which and you're right, people judge the results of the unstructured path often with the exceptions and with the people who made it. But apart from the hard work and toil, there are also a lot of people who have taken this unstructured path and not made it, and we don't get to see their stories because their stories are not being interviewed on the cover of Forbes magazine. Their stories are pushed
Absolutely.
beneath the ground because they're not successful stories, they aren't sellable stories, and they're not glamorous stories. Their stories are sad. And we hear of so many businesses that fail, we hear of so many people that fail, and yes, there is no hard and fast rule to it, but taking the unstructured path is romanticized, and it shouldn't be. People need to get a more accurate picture of it. But also the structured path is I think you said it very clearly, that does it make you a better businessman? No, it probably doesn't. But what, there are certain skills, there are certain structures, and there are certain tools, I would say, that your degree is likely to equip you with, which are likely, they are a part of your toolkit then, and you can use them in running a home or in running a multinational company.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Uh, um, what do you believe is so as students come and they study MBA, a lot of them go and get jobs, and a lot of them also suffer from academic burnout, sometimes in institutions like IIM, which is a real thing that I have heard of, unfortunately. A lot of people suffer from work burnout in the first 3-4 years. Their entire ambition, that entire fire, it sort of burns them out because it's so much. And so how do you think young students and young adults in general, who are just entering the corporate space, who are entering a very academically oriented B school, for example, how should they create this balance so that they don't burn out and this fire that is in their belly sustains through the rest of their life?
See, it's purely individual driven. When people talk to me, so I wear obviously multiple hats. So I wear the hat of a director as the director of this institution. I also wear the hat of a teacher when I'm in the classroom. And I also wear the hat of an advisor if somebody comes to me in my personal capacity and then asks me all of these questions. And the reason why I think I can answer these questions with a reasonable amount of surety is because I have gone exactly through the same life. So if somebody tries to tell me that engineering colleges burn you out, I'm sorry, I have studied in one. If somebody says IIMs burn you out, I'm sorry, I have studied in one and I'm not burnt out. I I I took my life as it came to me and I tried to do well with it. So the point over here is that there are some things where you need to get a handle on your own life. So what I mean by that is that if you take pressure and if you think that this is the only thing that is available to me in this institute, then that's the only thing which is available to you in the institute. It's as simple as that. Your own perception about what is it that you're here to get actually drives a large part of your life. So, for example, we have lots of sporting facilities over here, just like any good IIM. Now, whether you use those facilities or not is entirely dependent on you. How you manage your time is entirely dependent on you. So, while I was studying at IIM Ahmedabad earlier with KREC Surathkal, I participated in all the cultural activities. We had a great team of Damsharaj, we had a great team of Tom, Dick, and Harry, which was another competition which was played. I used to be a debater. I used to direct and act in plays. Likewise, at IIM Ahmedabad, even when I was working with Tata Steel, so people say corporate life, again, you can't follow everything because corporate life really sucks you out and they take out all your time. No, while I was working with Tata Steel, I conducted over 100 quizzes across the country. I used to be an avid reader. I used to write in a newspaper, including 2 weekly columns. I learned horse riding. I learned music, a whole lot of things. So I think the key over here lies with the individual in terms of managing time, number one, prioritizing things, number two, and then third, also realizing that look, while you are young is when you can really do all the hard work. You can't do it when you're old, any which way. So this is a time when you do have the energy. So instead of thinking about that, oh my God, I need to study for 10 hours and there's nothing left out of me, you need to realize that this is when you can do it. Beyond a point, once you cross a certain age, you will not have the capability to. Your eyesight will be weak. You will need spectacles. You will not have the physical strength and the stamina to do whatever. So prioritize. Understand that you have to work hard always in the early part of your life when you are young, for the simple reason that is the nature of evolution. The universe is built that way, that when you are young, you have to put in more hours, you have to do more hard work, so that subsequently when you become old, then you only stay with those things that really matter and are really important to you, and which you're physically, mentally, and emotionally capable of doing. So manage your time well and prioritize things.
Yeah, prioritizing is hard. It is not easy, but I'm sure it's you just have to do it, and you have to get to it. And you're right, these when you're young is when you have the energy to do them, so might as well take advantage. Advantage of your time, advantage of your energy, advantage of your mental acumen. And everybody's capable of so much. We sometimes undermine our own potential, but there is so much to be done, that there is space for everyone to succeed and space for everyone to flourish.
Absolutely. You just have to realize your own true potential.
Yeah, absolutely. That was extremely encouraging. And I think what I liked the most was when, I was connected and I said that, oh my God, I'm going to have to talk to somebody who is the director of IIM Indore. I'm going to sound so silly and I'm not going to be able to do this interview. But I think what you said was that, academics are a part of your life. They're an integral part of your life, but they're a part of your life. They should not be your whole life. And there are so many other parts of your journey through institutions, through your campus life, that are going to be defining elements of your personality. And those are so critical, and it's so important that we focus on them, and we give some of our energy and some of our time to them, and we create this entire prioritization activity. So thank you so much for bringing that holistic angle to life today.
My pleasure, Mishri.
This was such a great conversation. I hope this helps a lot of the aspiring IIM students that we have listening to this. And
I hope so too.
Yeah, and we are so grateful to have gotten the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.